Good morning, everybody. My name is Deborah Byrne from Deborah Byrne Psychology Services, known across social media as DBpsychology. I'm going to talk this morning about this week's blog, it's a relationship blog this week, but it's also about self-care because these are behaviours. There are 5 common behaviours that we would hear about that can cause problems within the relationship. Always remember that in a relationship you have yourself, your partner, and then the third person being the relationship itself. So whatever both parties bring into the relationship can cause problems, be that from childhood or from previous relationship problems, difficulties. Maybe you had another relationship, and that then, if that isn't resolved fully, that will still then impact on your current relationship. So it isn't just all about childhood and the impact of what went on and what you experienced in your childhood and your teen years. So a few words of caution on this. First off, no relationship is perfect. Absolutely no relationship. Anybody who tells you they don't argue, they're lying, or there's some serious problems there. Everybody has their ups and downs. Relationships, particularly long-term relationships, anybody who's ever been in one knows that they go in up and down. You know, you fall out of love, you fall back in love. That's normal. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say was, this blog is not, firstly, for to beat up anybody else or to beat yourself up with. That's very, very important, okay? It's an informational blog. It is about raising self-awareness, self-acceptance, but most importantly, it's about asking for help, about recognizing, okay, maybe I do this and I want my relationship to be better, so I need to ask for help. So that's the self-awareness, self-acceptance, and then asking for help part of it. So these are not in any particular order. Just because you may have one problem doesn't mean that that's worse than any of the others. There's no one is worse than any of the others at all in this. Have a look at it. It's at www.deborahbyrnepsychologyservices.com. I will link the blog as usual in the comments below. So let's get to it. So what's the first one? The first one is that we fail to express ourselves appropriately. This is about not being able to communicate effectively. It can come out in a number of ways. It can come out in inappropriate outbursts of anger. It can come out as subtle passive aggressive ways, or it can simply mean we're not able to speak up and say what we want or need. We actually can fail to ask for what we need. We feel invalidated maybe, and this is in ourselves. It's not to do with the other person. Remember this, all of these are about you. This is you and how you feel. So if you are not able to ask for what you need, and maybe you're not taking the explosion type phase, what happens then is you can build up those resentments, and they build up and up until you actually then explode. So there can be two ways. It's either you're always exploding, or you hold it in and then you explode. And sometimes when you hold it in and then you explode, it can have far more damaging consequences than the constant smaller explosions. Now, in saying all that, I will definitely say nobody, absolutely nobody, should be a punching bag for anybody else. So, please watch. I'm not talking about domestic violence here. I'm talking about how you interact when things go wrong with one another. If it's a domestic violence situation, please stay safe. Think about your own safety. If you've got children, think about your own safety. I do have a blog on that, and I will link that as well out to somebody who may have problems there. Now, this type of person, cannot set healthy boundaries. Usually they didn't learn how to set healthy boundaries, and it can very much be tied into the past. Yes, it can be a domestic violence situation, not necessarily so. It depends on the level of problems with their ability to communicate. Most of the time it does stem from childhood and what went on, how your parents interacted with one another, how they interacted with you, and not feeling good enough, not feeling validated enough, not feeling self-acceptance. So have a think about that one. Number 2, we people please. A lot of times the people pleasing can also be tied to codependency, and to relationships with addicts. And again, it can be a domestic violence situation, so I will put that out there. Not always necessarily so. People pleasing codependency does tend to be learned from early on. And a lot of people think that when they're people pleasing, you think that we are being kind and caring, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. You aren't. You really aren't. It's a very controlling form and a very controlling method of behavior that is used really when we behave. If we stop and think about it and we're really honest, because an awful lot of time people pleasers, codependents, will also see themselves as being martyrs. And again, they will hold in the resentments and probably have failed to communicate and failed to ask for what they need. They aren't being honest. They really are not being honest with themselves, first and foremost with themselves, and with somebody else, with their other partner or with other people. People pleasers, codependents tend to use the same methods, behavior with all their relationships. So they will take on too much for everybody and put themselves last. They have problems setting boundaries and coping with their emotions. So and coping with other people's emotions. So yeah, you could be somebody who's people pleasing because you're walking on eggshells with the other person. It may be a response to their behavior as well. So you can see why those behaviors would be a problem in a relationship. Number 3 is one on perfectionism, and I'm not going to take too long on this one because I have a whole blog coming out on perfectionism and how you know what it's all about and what you can do. So I think that's the one out on Monday. If not, it's out the following Monday, but it's coming up. I don't want to spend too long on perfectionism. I am going to talk about procrastination as well. As another blog coming out on that soon. All coming out in the next couple of weeks. So perfectionism can be so stressful, and we're seeing more and more of it for the simple reason social media, explosion with social media over the last few years has seen the rise of people having to have what they think as the perfect lifestyle, appearance and everything else. So that we're seeing, the rise in somebody taking on this behavior of the perfect. It's very much feeling emotionally threatened, and they perfectionists look for validation outside themselves. They put more emphasis on other people's opinions. So therefore, they're not very self-accepting. They don't feel good enough. And you can see then how this could have a knock-on effect. If everything has to be perfect, if the people around them have to be perfect too, if they have to have a certain standard, you can see how stressful and it does quickly roll out to be very much a burnout situation and miserable. I mean, really miserable, depressed, anxiety problems can come up for this. So, self-acceptance and setting boundaries again are going to be the key. And I will say it with all of these problems, I have to emphasize, you really do need outside help. If these 5 common problems, if you've even got one of them, you really need to be going and asking for therapy from somebody, a professional like myself. Number 4 is the blame game. Again, often seen, it's a defense mechanism, as you can expect. It's, we can't be to blame, or we blame others for what's going on. So it is a defense mechanism that is used in people, more likely learnt in childhood. Again, it's a learned behavior. It can be unlearned. All of these behaviors can be unlearned, by the way. And that's why I say to people, it is something you need to head into therapy for. And as you can imagine, if somebody is adopting the blame game, as in, I'm always to blame or you're always to blame. So there can be two types there. You can be somebody who always takes all the blame for everything. The wind blowing outside, it's their fault. Everything is their fault. That's pretty hard to have a relationship with somebody like that's feeling that victimized. And they're having a very tough time themselves. So, you can understand that. And then there's the other side of this, the other flip coin of this, if you like, is that the individual who blames everybody else. Sorry. So you might find that in addictions, a personality disorder. I'm thinking about narcissists in particular. So these people need help. Both these types of blame gamers need help. So and you can see how it can impact on the relationship, devastating in some cases. You'll often find the ones that operate the blame game of everybody else, as I said, would be addicts. They would be the narcissists. So therefore, the partner is usually then the other side will be the people pleasers walking on eggshells and the codependents. So think about it. Usually in these kind of relationships, both partners are exhibiting one of these problems. And number 5 is the last one. You don't like to be vulnerable or to be seen as vulnerable. It's more like you don't like to be seen as vulnerable. You find it very difficult to open up, and that's what's really going on here. To be able to open up requires a level of trust, and all relationships. It doesn't matter whether it's a relationship with your work colleagues. If you don't trust somebody, it's not going to be a relationship. It's not going to be a good relationship. So carry that forward then into an intimate relationship. If somebody is unable to open up, it's going to prove very difficult to have a relationship with them. Now, in saying that, yes, some people are shy. They may take time to open up to you. It tends to stem as well from something that has happened in the past. It could be a previous relationship. It could be some sort of childhood trauma. But the one thing I will say to you is, if somebody isn't opening up to you and you've been in a relationship with them a while, do check out if this is an unavailability issue as well, because that could be a red flag. And I do link that blog out. If you go to this week's blog at www.deborahbyrnepsychologyservices.com, in this particular section on not being able to be vulnerable, you'll see I talk about red flag there, and I link out to all the common red flags that would be in a relationship. If there are red flags in a relationship, it's not really a relationship. You have major issues here. And you could be saving yourself a lot of trouble if you can identify what's really going on here. So that's just the caveat on that one. I would just be aware of that a red flag can mean that there is something off in the relationship. So that's this week's blog, a short one today. Thank you all very much for listening, as always, and thank you to people who watch it in replay. I just would like to say, I know a lot of people at the moment are very anxious, naturally so, about what's going on. If you could just take a moment to recenter yourselves. I do talk about self-care being your foundation, and in that, using meditation and that, and journaling out your problems and what's going on. I do know that a lot of people will feel very vulnerable. People are going to, feel very isolated. Maybe people that are having a hard time will withdraw. So do check on them, do make a phone call. If you are feeling your anxiety levels are going up, you might want to check in with your GP. If you've been on medication before, if you are struggling, do not forget to reach out to others, even by phone. We can still reach out. We can use social media in a positive way for this to reach out to others. The only thing I would say to you is, if you get caught up with it, and there is an awful lot on social media and in the media at the moment about what's going on, please, please turn it off. Step away from it, even for half an hour. Give yourself a mental break from everything. Spend time with your family if they're in the house with you. Reach out, as I said, reach out to somebody. A lot of therapists, including myself, are offering online therapy. Reach out to them. Reach out, ask for help again. You're not alone. Absolutely not alone. We're all in this together, and please be kind to one another. Have a little bit more patience. Things may take a little bit more time than usual. And I know a lot of people are stressed and worried, understandably so. Please take some time to try and calm yourself. I link some meditations. They're all free. If you wish to take them and use them, go ahead. But if not, the simplest one, I would recommend, there is a link to it, will be the 7-Eleven, which is just simply, you can use it on the go anywhere you are, is to simply remember to breathe in and then exhale for longer. It automatically calms down the brain. I don't want to harp on about it. There's a lot of information overload at the moment. So please just be kind, be patient with one another. Reach out if you need help, and try and take a break from all the social media and all the media and everything that's going on at the moment, and spend some time with your family if you can. Thank you. Good morning.